This presentation is about how violent video games depicting graphic and/or mature content have impacted society's perception of video games altogether. The media often likes to use video games as a scapegoat for any atrocities or tragedies committed by young adults, giving nonviolent games the same reputation by association. The industry has been given a bad reputation, diminishing the sacrifices and hard work that developers have put into making a desirable form of enjoyment. Upon researching the media's claims, few to none are true, yet they still slander the name and work of countless contributors to the gaming world. Violent video games are often scolded by the people who do not play them due to the psychological effects that they believe the youth will experience if they continue playing. A large cause for their concern is related to acts of violence committed by teens despite a lack of evidence implicating violent video games in their crimes. A grievance that people have with violent video games is that certain games often portray an excessive amount of blood, which a study reportedly found to increase levels of aggression in players compared to the players who played the same game with no blood in them. However, a newer study that involved the analysis of data collected from 21,000 players of first-person shooter games indicated that the correlation between gaming and aggression is so minuscule that it cannot fully qualify as evidential. In fact, certain games that contain elements of violence have been found to contrarily decrease levels of aggression in players. Any aggressive behaviors that were exhibited by players was linked to destroying objects in games rather than destroying people. Another common worry among parents and non-gamers is that game-related frustrations will accumulate and lead to the player acting on his or her feelings in a dangerous way. In reality, no such evidence exists connecting aggression and gaming. On the contrary, the long-term effects of violent games on young gamers is reportedly near zero. Agitation may occur, but agitation does not necessarily translate to violence or the desire to engage in violent acts. Graphic video games such as Mortal Kombat are especially controversial and have been for years since the game notoriously depicts humanoid characters being realistically brutalized and eviscerated in a gory and bloody manner. While the media pandered to the parents of young gamers with warnings about the game's content, the media failed to consider how the game could impact people other than the younger generation of gamers, namely its developers. An unnamed developer for the Mortal Kombat games came out and reported having severe PTSD and hallucinations while developing the game, citing the source material as what unsettled him. In order to achieve realism in the games, developers were required to reference images of murders and crime scenes for accuracy. The developers of violent games are much more likely to be psychologically affected than players are, yet the media places the needs of the players over those of the developers, who sacrifice their mental health for the good of the product. Furthermore, violent games are frequently addressed in politics whenever lawmakers and politicians believe that restricting the ability to purchase such games will reduce the likelihood of tragedies occurring, believing that violent games indeed encourage violence and a ban against them will reduce the crime rate. For instance, in 2019, former President Donald Trump took a stance against violent video games, believing that they were to blame for mass shootings, and claimed that they were a platform designed to teach young people how to kill. Not only is this statement false, but it slanders the work and reputation of game developers who stand behind their hard work. While some developers feel innocent in how their work affects consumers, others are quicker to claim responsibility for their actions. In response to Trump's accusations, some developers claim that violent games are not unlike new and misunderstood art forms like rap, which means that criticism is inevitable, thus it must be defended. However, defending a belief does not exclude room for improvement. Alternatively, developers of first-person shooters maintain the belief that their games are apolitical fun, which does not justify the need to be concerned with how their product affects consumers because it's in the name of entertainment and provides a fictional experience. First-person shooters are especially scrutinized due to how they educate the youth about military action, war, and firearms in great detail. The issue with this is that the developers refuse to consider the dangers of extensively educating children about weapons. Overall, the media that we consume does not influence violent crime. Stronger predictors of violent crime include poverty, substance abuse, and child abuse rather than violent games. It's unfortunately slanderous at this point for the media to blame violent games for any crimes amongst gamers. Restricting the availability of graphic video games will not reduce the amount of violent acts committed in the world, nor will it unfortunately prevent tragedies like mass shootings. It's important for the media to understand that violent video games are not the sole cause of aggression in younger generations.